Okay, Privyet.
Привет, hello.
I'm here with Alex Hitch, and we're going to do reflections. And I actually did an interview with you in my old Grilled series, but that was a long, long time ago. That was like the beginning of Gambit. That was back when I knew absolutely nothing about League of Legends. I still don't know that much, but I really knew nothing back then. So I hope this time we're going to go more in depth on some certain things. And so I want to start way back in time, which is since you're playing top lane now in NIP as we speak now, I heard from someone that a long, long time ago you also played top lane for a while, but well, back when APs used to be played top. But I know you also played jungler for a bit of a while as well. So like, was this only for a short amount of time you tried these two roles? Did you switch to mid pretty quickly? What was it like in that sense?
I know, like I played a lot in solo queue and I played almost every role there. So I played jungle, top, mid, and there was no difference for me. And I could play every role in the team too. But I think that at that moment in Russia, there were not that many good junglers. So I usually played jungle and in the teams I formed. And like we played with the team and then I would tried to the other team to qualify to Kiev. I think it was the first qualifier, and I played top lane there. So I played against Wicked, and I did really good in top. So I think that that was the game that everyone remembers. And after that, I switched to mid, and we formed the Moscow 5 team. And after that, I think I played mid all the time.
Ah, okay. So you only switched around the qualifier basically when Empire was spawned.
Yeah, so I switched like around 1 week before the qualifier. I was playing mostly jungle at that time, but I really liked to play mid in solo queue.
Okay, because this is something interesting that I actually heard when I did my interview with Edward. You were actually there, you did the translation for me, which was Edward said, because everyone who's a fan, okay, actually has heard this story that when Diamondprox joined Empire, he was only like 1800 elo on the ladder. So they all think to themselves like, wow, he must have not been very good. But Edward said when he joined and he brought Diamondprox with him, like, oh, I've got a guy who can be our jungler. He said something like he asked you and said like that you have to like teach Edward and Diamond like some of the game because like Diamond hasn't played competitively or something. Is this a true story? Like, did you actually have to kind of like train Diamond up in like how to play jungle or give him some tips or what was it like, do you think?
I think he watched a lot of streams, like Odd One streams and my streams, and he played pretty similar style to me. So mostly I was really aggressive mid and was winning most of the matchups. So he could do whatever he wanted to, and he went for the aggressive counter jungling that was really popular. At least I was doing it a lot in solo queue. And I think it was really effective in our team. And after that, he improved it himself already. But at the time of the qualifier, I think he played only 1-2 heroes. And we were really afraid that he will get banned out, but no one even tried to ban him. So he could play, like, I think, Udyr all the games and maybe switch to something else. Like he played 1-2 heroes, I guess.
The reason why that was an interesting question to me, though, like when Edward told that story, was if I ever looked at the Gambit team. Okay, Diamondprox is obviously a star. Like when he did his counter jungling, everyone thought like, wow, he's the best jungler. But it always seemed like the team worked its best when you were on fire, when you like got really going in the mid lane, and when in team fights you could be really strong and you could come in and you could get all the kills. Is there a degree to which, like adding the pieces to the team gradually, like adding Edward, adding Diamondprox, getting to give them input into how to play the game? Were you able to like kind of base the team around you? Was there any degree to which that was like understood, like I'm the focal point, or I have to get going in a certain way, or if we build team comps, we build them around me? Was it anything like that when you used to do that?
I don't know. I don't think that I really thought about it. Like I was just, maybe it's Russian tendency, but I was just trying to form the team that will win everyone, and I really wanted to win. So like me and other players were getting really upset if we were losing. And I think that the team with Irugat, Zuling, me, and Darian and Genja was the longest one that didn't change the lineup. But I mean, before that, there were different stories. I think that I have left the team a couple of times, or we were in team with me, Genja, and someone else, not even Irugat and Zulin, and then we kicked Darian because he was feeding a lot. There were a lot of things like that, and like it's a really interesting story, and I don't really remember everything. But overall, I just wanted to win. And then when we got the team and we started playing scrims, we saw that it was going really good. And I think that everyone suited everyone really well at that time.
I actually remember, since you brought this up, that when you were talking, the team you were talking about there, MTG, the one that was like you, Darian, Genja, and then like these two other guys. I actually remember the person who's your wife now, when she was just your girlfriend, I think it was in an AMA or something, she wrote about how in that team, like, only some of you got along with each other. Like, okay, this person didn't like Darian, and then Genja didn't like this person. And what was strange about it was, at the time, it was like, oh, well, that makes sense that the team would break apart. But then it sounds like that's sort of like what Moscow 5 was like, to some degree. Like, certain people, even though you were winning all these tournaments, certain people didn't even talk to this guy, or he's not really friends with him. Is this really true? Was the team not just like, in public now, every team should pretend like, no, we're a family, like we all love each other and we're all best friends? Was it like that in Moscow 5?
I actually think in Moscow 5 it was like that. I think all the problems are usually coming when you start losing, and Moscow 5 was not losing, so we didn't have that much of problems. Even though we got moment when, like, before Kiev, we were winning almost every scrim, then we won Kiev. Then before Hanover, we were almost losing almost every scrim. But like in last 2 or 3 days, we actually, I think, got the huge win streak and got our game, and then we played Hanover like our game and won it. But overall, I don't really remember. Like I think that we got some problems, but it wasn't that huge.
One of the things that Moscow 5, going into Gambit as well, is most famous for is the idea that, okay, most teams, it's like really important, like they have to keep close in the gold lead. That's what they should be looking at all the time. Like, okay, what can we do to get some goal back? Like, we're too far behind. But everyone always used to say that if Gambit is even against the other team, then actually like the other team is behind, because Gambit can always come and win the team fight late, even if they're like 5k behind, Did you always sense this yourselves in the team? Like, was there ever a degree to which you like relied on that a bit too much? Like, even if you're behind, you're not worried, like, oh, we'll still win somehow? What do you think?
I don't think we actually thought about that much, but in the beginning, at those moments, it was a lot around Drake, and we were really good at securing Drakes. And I think in almost all tournaments we got all the Drakes. That's why we're not getting behind in gold. And then like everyone knew that if we win only one team fight, then we can just get like 3 or 4 turrets in a row. That's where all the advantage came from. We just snowballed really hard from one team fight, because usually our 0 goal difference was not as much as it is, because we were securing all the Drakes when the enemy teams were pushing the turrets. And so I think that's where it came from, though our team fighting abilities were really good.
In terms of like knowing that you were always good at team fighting, is there a sense, when I look at the Gambit over this year, 2014, in 2013 you still had times when you could be really good, like IEM Katowice, and certain times in the splits you looked really good. But if we look at this year, when it hasn't been that good for Gambit, it feels like your team fighting is still good, but maybe your team is one of the ones that didn't embrace like the analysis aspect, because one of the areas where analysis can help obviously is like in the early game and making sure you have the really good level 1 and that you've scouted what this person will do, and you can kind of get an advantage there. Whereas if your team was always so good at coming from behind and stuff, do you think you ever took that for granted? Like, did you guys put enough attention into the strategical side that's very important now?
I think we were doing it. I think more of the team got exhausted with all the traveling and from each other, so we stopped like relying on each other and listening to each other's opinions, and that led to a lot of miscommunication in team. And overall, not only that, but also our rotations, I think we adapted really quick to the patches coming and to the people changing the playstyle, and it is really hard for us to move as fast as enemies on the map. So most of the time there are games where there are almost like 0 team fights and you already lose.
Is that one of the things about the new way of playing that maybe you don't like or isn't as good for you? Like, you prefer it when you can have a lot of fights, right?
I actually don't care how to play. I just want to win. I think that this kind of play just didn't suit Gambit that well, because everyone, I don't know, like I feel that if you just like look at our game, you can call it stupid because, I don't know, or dumb, because our rotations are not that good, and like we got 1 or 2 clean games where we were doing everything perfect, but other than that we're doing pretty stupid mistakes about going to the turrets or moving around the map or earning the vision and everything. I think that there was too much work that we need to do, but we didn't, and it continued and grew. Like the problems grew bigger and bigger from time to time, and that led to us losing to Rocket, to SK, and to other teams that were maybe not that good mechanically, but their like strategies and rotations were much better.
When you said before, like when you made the team, you were just thinking like, oh, I just want like to put together a team that can win. And when you're describing now, like, you know, you don't. It's not necessarily that you don't want to play that style of game. That's just the Gambit style is to play like that. When I said before how it always seemed as though Gambit looked like it was built around Alexic, like when they were at their best, it was when you were playing your best. How much of Gambit's style of play comes from Alexic's style of play and the way he wants to play the game? Like if I took you in a time machine now back to like the middle of 2013 and I put you in a totally different European team, would your style of play be totally different?
Yeah, I think yes. Like I can adapt to any style. I can change like heroes. I played assassins before that. I played like Karthus and everything. It just takes some time, but I can do it. So most of the time I'm trying to find what hero suits the best for what moment of time in Gambit and use it. But for example, I was trying to force like us to play Siege style like Koreans do and play something like Nidalee Caitlyn comps that were really good, but I don't know, team just didn't want to do it. And it was upsetting me a bit because at that moment when teams in Europe didn't know about it and didn't start to play it, they wouldn't even know what to do against it, and it were like free wins. And then you can just develop that strategy and do it even better than Koreans, for example, and then it will be free win. But we didn't do it, and we're just playing our game, and then I don't know, it just. I think that you need to change, even though it's really hard sometimes.
When you say that, it sounds like when you say, okay, some of the players didn't want to change or they want to keep doing what they were doing before, two people who the public at least thinks are quite stubborn are Genja and Darian, because it just seems like they have their style and they're going to do that style no matter what, you know. Sometimes even they'll do the same build no matter whether they're winning or whether they're losing. Like, were these two players difficult to work with in that sense in terms of like changing style or adapting to new things?
I actually think that Darian was the one that I really liked the logic, and he understood the first that like pushing the turrets is really good, but no one was listening to him. I think more of a Darian problem is like being over aggressive. So you need the whole team to be aggressive. And when, for example, Diamond started to play a bit more passive, like farming the jungle, so I got to play more passive at mid because there are too much ways to gank me, and our bot lane was playing pretty passive for a long time already. Darian got the problem that he was the only one aggressive, and that led to a lot of deaths at top lane, because if you play aggressive, you need the whole team to play aggressive. But I don't think that it's the problem with adaptation. I think more of the problems were with Genja and his logic about the game that was like it was okay. And I mean, sometimes you can think that it's really hard to argue with him because it's when he says something, it sounds really logic. But I don't know, like he didn't want to play push comps and play against play with Caitlyn, and then when we, for example, when we played against it ourselves, we were just losing really hard all the time.
When you talk about Genja in that way, when I've read interviews with the Moscow 5 members it was really early in that team, Edward even said like when he first joined Moscow 5, Genja was like way above his level. Like Genja basically was like amazing, and Edward had to sort of catch up or learn things from him. And just like if Genja told him something, he had to think, oh, that's probably right. Okay, if I think it otherwise, I'm probably wrong. Is there a degree to which, because Genja was so good for the first part of Moscow 5, like either he has like maximum respect from everyone, or he himself he doesn't want to be told how to do something, like he thinks his way is right? What is it like, do you think?
I think it's like the thing about Gambit overall. Everyone thinks that he's right, and this is the thing where problems are coming from, because it's really hard to find like the center of it, like that the thing that everyone will be right at. So, for example, if you're arguing with someone, it's really hard in League of Legends at all to argue. For example, if you're a mid laner, to argue with your AD carry and to say that he's doing something wrong, and that's why I think that we really liked was Analyst, but when we got him, I think it was a bit late for split and playoffs, but I think it paid off a bit, and it helped us to at least secure the 5th place.
One thing that's always been hard to figure out as an outsider when I look at Gambit and I would see Genja play is so many people online will say that Genja is bad, okay, if he does like a build that they don't agree with, or he doesn't build the last Whisper or something. But one of the reasons it's always been really hard for me to figure out when he's doing things right or wrong is the fact that his way of playing AD carry is so different from almost every other AD carry. You know, like almost every good AD carry in a top team wants to be like the double lift type guy, like the hyper carry, and then he's in close and he's getting people peeling for him all the time and he's trying to kill everyone. Whereas Genja has always been that weird, like, stay maximum distance and just try to use like spells instead of auto attacks. Like, how would you evaluate Genja for the last like year and a half? Not just the beginning of Moscow 5, but like the Gambit period. When was he playing really good, and when was he maybe sometimes not figuring out the right style? What do you think?
I think that Genja really likes the training. I mean, he doesn't play that much in the game, and I think that he doesn't really take LCS seriously. So he plays really, really good at playoffs or some kind of offline tournaments. Though even then, he sometimes thinks that his build is right and builds something weird. But I don't think that that's that much of a problem. But more like I think that during LCS you need to train during the season and not like before the playoffs when we got 1 week and then you say that, oh, we didn't have enough time to prepare. And I think that like Genja is a really good player, and when he plays for like 100%, he's really, really good. And you could see it. Like, for example, our bot lane was losing sometimes, but at playoffs they didn't lose a single matchup, and they played really good, like all the games.
When you describe with some of these players the problems of they have their own idea, or you can't necessarily argue with them because they have some logic to it, this might sound like a strange question, but from the outside, people think of Alexic and they think, okay, he was the captain of Gambit, he was the leader. Could you not just tell them, like, okay, you know, you have to do this, or like, I'm the best player, like, look, well, I have to change my game, so you have to change your game? Was it really like totally democratic in the team? Like, if the person says, I don't want to do that, then they don't have to, yeah?
I think that I was captain of Moscow 5, but I wasn't captain of Gambit. Or
what's the difference, do you think?
I don't know, like people stopped listening to me and I stopped speaking to them, and I think it was okay for both sides. We just went full democratic mode and like everyone could say and everyone would listen, but I didn't try to enforce like my point of view because I thought that everyone is like everyone's level got high enough so he can think about the game himself. And if people, I don't think that I'm that much better or anything to force them to listen to my point of view and do what I want. And I'm not sure if it was right move or not by me, but I think that it is better than arguing with players and having conflict in the team most of the time.
When Moscow 5 was winning everything, people by default called you the best team in the world because at the time, before Moscow 5, the best teams were supposed to be like Fnatic and the North American teams, and you beat these teams to become the best in Moscow 5. And this was before Koreans and teams like that came to tournaments. But there was this big period when you were winning all the tournaments where TSM in America started winning all the tournaments just in America. I know that for Russian players, it can be really hard to get visas to go to tournaments in America. But were there ever tournaments you tried to go to, or you wanted to go to like an MLG or an IPL or whatever it was? Or did you really, some reason you weren't interested in going to them? Why did you never go there and battle TSM?
To be honest, I don't really remember. I think there were more problems of us not getting invited and them not going, and then we were not interested, or for example, we were like relaxing from the previous tournament. Or I think more of a problem was that at that time, no of the travelings were paid. So going for Russian team going to US, it was I think around $10,000 or even more. And I don't really think that our organization wanted to pay the costs, and we didn't want to pay either. Even I think if we win, then we would go zero or even in minus in money. And like we didn't think that it is a really good idea. And I think at that moment we thought that we are better. So there was nothing to prove at that time.
Okay, well, so, I mean, when like,
like wasting money to prove something wasn't our goal.
Well, when you say there that you thought you were better, that's kind of what I was setting up there, which is that people did still consider Moscow 5 the best, especially because even if TSM was winning their lands, they never got to play you. So as a result, when it came to the World Championship that year, the Season 2 World Championship, I know even though you guys lost in the semi-finals, I've talked to lots of players since then, and nearly every player has told me like, oh, Moscow 5 should have won that semi-final and they should have won the tournament. Like if they play Taipei Assassins 10 times in a row, not just once, then Moscow 5 wins most of those. Do you really believe that yourself?
Yeah, I would believe that ourselves. I think the problem was that we did so many huge mistakes in game 2 that we couldn't even find out the secret of their strategy, and like there were a lot of problems. I was really upset after the games, and I think that Worlds was one of the points where everything was starting to get wrong. But mostly, like if I remember correctly, that even after that, I think in 1 year, I talked to some of TPA guys, and they said that like after the first game, they were really crushed, and they were trying to use some kind of sneaky secret strategy. And so the point of the strategy was picking Nidalee and trying to avoid team fights as much as possible. And this was the thing that they did. Like we didn't have the team fights in those games because of the Nidalee, because of split pushing all day. And I think that when some team, like for example Gambit, excels in team fights, and enemy team just avoids all the team fights, so they just outplayed us strategically. But I don't think that they got more of such kind of strategies. So if we, for example, only banned out Nidalee, I think we would release a lot of pressure and would maybe win the series. But you will never know.
It's actually a famous thing with Gambit fans that Gambit don't respect Nidalee. Because you once said in an AMA, like someone said, what is the main flaw? And you said like sometimes not respecting certain champions, you know. Is there a reason why you guys didn't used to ban Nidalee? Because in some of the key games, you would always lose to it, it seemed.
So in this game, it was like first game, there was no Nidalee. In the second game, there was Nidalee. But we lost really hard to like everything, because everything started really bad, starting from the first blood, and then they invaded in our jungle. So we thought that Nidalee wasn't the problem of the game. At least Darian told that he can handle it, and then in the third game it went totally wrong when Nidalee got like 2 turrets and was pressuring everyone. So I would say yeah, but I don't really think that Nidalee is that kind of a problem. I think that it's more like you should understand what hero does and to play properly against it. And Nidalee was just hard hero to play at that time, and it's hard to play now. But sometimes it's really hard to ban, for example, if it's like the third game and the team against you picks it for the first time. But yeah, we underestimate it. I think Frog and Sanivia, Nidalee sometimes, and other heroes, and we paid for it with our losses.
So another thing from that era that I wanted to ask you about, which is something I've never heard you asked, is everyone remembers when World Elite won IPL 5 and they didn't lose a single series, they just beat every single team. But actually, people might not know this, but just before that tournament, you went to China and you went to this big tournament that World Elite was at, and you played them in like a show match. You played like World Elite and you played Invictus Gaming. You just beat both. Like it didn't even seem super hard. And then right afterwards was IPL 5. So was World Elite already super good, even in just this show match you played? Was it only a fun show match? How could they suddenly just overnight become like the absolute best? What do you think?
I think that they played good, but I think you can say same as for Chinese team and Russian teams and everything. Like more of I think we wanted to prove something more than they wanted to win, and maybe it was even their strategy, or they were not like trying that hard because it was so much. Like you never know when it's so much how much the team will try and how important the win is for them. You can say that they, for example, tried, but not as hard as they could for the tournament. And
what do you think they were good at when they were at their best? Like when they were on top then, what were they good at?
I don't really remember the games right there. It was so long time ago. I think that their bot lane was really, really strong, and the Wei Zhao was just beast AD carry. He was like, he got like most of the farm, and he was farming even if his team was like getting behind. And I think Cao Mei was doing really good in those series. I think that's all that I remember. And Misai was doing good as always, but I think those players were outstanding from their team.
When you think about their team, okay, the 2 stars were the 2 you mentioned there, Messiah, mid laner, and Wei Zhao, obviously AD carry. When you have 2 really big star players, it's always hard to know, like, who is the main guy making the team win? Who is the better of the two? Like, if Messiah, if we could make him speak English, okay, and we put him into a European team, would he have been just as good as like Froggen and these, just as a mid laner alone, not in World Elite? What was he like in that sense? Just his skills alone.
It's really hard to say because he stopped playing, and I don't know, like I haven't played against him a lot. But for example, it's a really hard example, but I think if you put, for example, Faker in the European team, he will be as good. So it's more the question of the mechanical skill. There's like I need to. It's really hard to judge on when you watch from the third point of view. I need to play against him myself on mid lane to understand how good he is. For example, when Bjergsen only came to the scene, I said that this guy will be the superstar, and he's really, really good, and you can see it by his moves. So it's more about moves. But I think that Messiah was really good, and his decision-making was really outstanding. That's why he excels at TF, for example.
So if Alexic is judging another mid laner, he judges based on when Alexic actually plays that guy. Like, how does it feel? Like, is he like harassing me really well? And I can't, like, these are the sorts of things your criteria in your mind?
I think there are different criteria, but mostly I'm trying to judge the guy from the laning phase, because to be honest, there are not that many mid laners that can cause some problems in the laning phase, and Bjergsen is one of them, and Froggen is the other one, and others either play over aggressive or play too passive or just play like you can vary your playstyle depending on your goals. But for example, Froggen is really hard to gank and he's farming a lot at the same time, and Bjergsen is just applying a lot of pressure. I think Nukeduck is the guy that applying a lot of pressure too, but I think that sometimes he plays too safe. But I think it was coming from the Lemondog's playstyle that they were playing really safe till mid-late game and then just won the game all the time.
Even though Season 2 was considered like the dream meta for the mid laner, because it was just farm all the time, even taking all the wolves rates, everything, there's certain mid laners from back then, like people like you and xPeke and Froggen, all have been really good even to now. But there were certain people who were at the top back then, mid laners, who couldn't handle playing in this modern era. So a good example might be like Rapid Star from Frost, or even Ambition has like fallen down quite a lot. He used to be considered really, really good. Who are the guys where they weren't back in this era here, when you're saying there weren't that many really, really good mids that impressed you that much? Who are the guys where they have really big fame, but you always found it like it's easy to play this guy, or I can handle most of them? Was the names who stood out? Very highly rated guys? I mean, you got to play against Ambition, you've played Z-Tai, you've played Toys. Were they all as good as the hype says they are?
I think that they were. Actually, Z-Tai was really, really good because of the mechanics, I guess, because of the skill shots and everything. Toys was easier in lane, for example, but as far as I remember, he was really good at like positioning and team fights. And others, I would say sometimes I feel like xPeke is overrated, but then he comes into the tournament and turning on his beast mode and just 1v9s people. And like xPeke is some kind of a guy that doesn't try hard sometimes, and you feel that maybe he's overhyped, but then he comes into the tournament and and you feel like you're playing against another guy, and who was that guy you played before?
You've never got in an official game to play against Faker. I mean, I know you also, I remember from your AMA, you said you didn't even get to practice them at Worlds because they didn't have time or something. And so every other mid laner who's really good, I get the sense, like for when I talk to Froggen will say, okay, yes, Faker is the best, but there's a degree to which he doesn't quite believe it in the same way as everyone else does. Like he thinks to himself like, yeah, but if Faker was playing me, would he be able to do the same things? You know, would I make it harder, or would I be able to stop something he does here? Do you get the same sense when you watch Faker play? Like if he actually played Alexic, maybe you could do better than other people have done, or he wouldn't be as amazing as he looks in all the highlight movies? What do you think?
I think that Faker is good, I guess, but overall, I think that he got a lot of help, like from Bangi, I guess, and they were playing as team really, really good. And you can see, for example, now when their team is in slump, at least in Korea, that Faker is not like shining anymore. But I think it's more about like even Bangi, because I feel like Bengi is not playing that good, and because Faker is playing pretty much aggressive, he is losing mid now because of like his like aggressive play style. For example, he never uses magic resistance, and like he usually relies on his damage and everything. Overall, like when I watched Faker, he was really strong guy, and I really like the guys that are aggressive. I think that it is much better way to play League of Legends than playing passive. So it's really hard to judge, but I guess that it's just like really hard to judge until you play against the guy. But I guess I would have a lot of problems against him in mid lane because of the aggressiveness of his play style.
Every really good European mid laner, they are so good that all they tend to get is praise. Like everyone says they're amazing. He's this guy, he's so good at that, so good at this. If you play against some of them, if I ask you like one by one, can you give me kind of like in football you call it like the scouting report? Like this is like you say, okay, his strengths are this, but here's like maybe his weakness. Like if you play him, maybe try and make him do this and you'll have a better chance up against him, even if he's a really good player. So in League of Legends, if you were playing against a team that has Froggen in, what is the secret to having a chance to beat Froggen? What do you have to make him do, or what do you have to do to make it harder for him? What do you think it is?
I think there were always two ways of playing against Froggen. Or now I would say there are even three ways. Like first way to shut down the jungler, then he won't win the mid lane and the game by himself. Second way is shut down his side lanes, and the third way, I don't really remember what I wanted to say, but okay, like overall, it's really hard to shut down Froggen himself, because even if he applies pressure and he ganks and everything, he most of the time doing it so safe. Like if you play, for example, poker, I would say it is called tight aggressive play style.
Sure, yeah.
And and I think that it's really hard to even bait a summoner from Froggen on some kind of ganks or anything. So it's much easier, for example, to just leave the lane like 1v1 with the winning matchup, and then against Froggen, and then you just like, for example, pressure the jungler. And I think that the problem of Froggen can be of him like, or to say it, being a bit overextending, I guess. Like sometimes he thinks that he's much better, and I think that it can be minus, and you can like work on that. Like he will think that he's much stronger than your mid laner, and because of that, you can, for example, pick the winning matchup for your mid laner. Like Froggen, for example, is still saying that Karthus counters LeBlanc, so you can get LeBlanc into Karthus, and then you will just abuse the fact that. For example, LeBlanc can apply pressure on early levels in mid lane, so LeBlanc will be able to move while Karthus got to stay on lane, and you will just, for example, get some aggressive jungler like Lee Sin, and then LeBlanc with Lee Sin, for example, will invade the enemy jungle, and Karthus won't be able to move, and by that you will just shut down enemy jungler, and then you will win. Overall, I think that a lot of matchups can stay against LeBlanc, but the thing of LeBlanc is that she can move, and after that she is really good in pick comps. You should just use the pluses of the hero, and just like there are weaknesses, but there are a lot of like strong sides of LeBlanc that you can use.
What about xPeke? If you're playing against xPeke, what was always the game plan in your head, at least?
I think xPeke's most problems are the pool of heroes that he's using. I think that he really lacks heroes lately. I don't know why. So if you're playing, for example, at LCS, I don't even think that you need a tip, because you never know if he will come good or bad in the game. But in other games, for example, if you don't have anything to ban, I think you can even like ban 3 heroes of xPeke, pick the fourth one, and then you almost certainly will know the hero that he will pick. So you can almost like counter him by that way. Yeah, I think that is the most of the problem. But overall, he's a really good player, and he's really strong at lane. And actually, there is another thing that he does. He's playing, I think, super safe, much safer than others sometimes. For example, he was the first one that picked cleans over ignite all the time, or barriers and everything. I think xPeke is really, really good in terms of skill. I'm still not sure when he's playing like super safe on lane. The thing that he does really good, and I think he's even better than Frogident, is like farming. I think that it hurts Cyanide a bit, but I'm not sure. I think that they worked it out as a team, and like xPeke takes all the jungle farm, and usually if he plays something like Orianna, you will see that he's ahead of the enemy mid laner in CS most of the time. That's why I think he's trying to pick safe summoners and everything, because he relies more on farm and like getting ahead of the enemy mid laner because of farm than actually like killing or trying to outroam or outplay. I think he's more relied on something like based and something good, like the thing that you can always rely on.
Back in Season 2, when it was the farm meta and mages were very, very popular, that was when Fnatic wasn't so good. They weren't a top team. And now obviously they had a couple of different players in the team. It wasn't the same as it was now. Then Season 3, it was all assassins, and xPeke was at his absolute best, it seemed. Now in Season 4, like you're saying, sometimes xPeke isn't as great as we've seen him before. And it feels like now we've maybe gone back to more of a mage sort of play, or wave clear sort of just safer champions. Does this have anything to do, do you think, with why xPeke doesn't look as amazing as he was in Season 3?
I think that maybe it's, this thing, maybe it's there's a team the whole. Like, for example, if we watch the game, I think with C9, his Orianna was totally beast, but he didn't have the follow-up. And so overall, I think it's more of a problem of the team rather than the player. Like, it's really hard to shine with something like Orianna compared to something like Assassin. It's sometimes, you do the super beautiful shockwaves, but it will be only highlighted if your team got the follow-up and then you kill all the people. But if you do a 4-man shockwave and then you don't kill the enemy team, then you will think that Orianna is not shining. But he did those shockwaves. There was just not enough damage.
Okay, this will sound like a weird question, but I've never seen it answered. After you were in Moscow 5 and your team left, you were still absolutely one of the best teams in the world. And so when I heard that Moscow 5 has to shut down, I thought, okay, well, they will obviously go to a really big organization now. Like, maybe they will get signed by like Evil Geniuses or SK or some big name, you know. And all of a sudden, Gambit just appears. This organization called Gambit, you join them. And even to this day, I've never heard like who owns Gambit, who funds Gambit, where did Gambit come from? Like, I've been around a long time in esports. There was no Gambit as far as I know before your team joined it. So can you give me a basic answer? Who is Gambit?
I don't really know myself that much. I know that there are some private investments, and overall I think they were interested in League of Legends team, maybe some League of Legends fan, and so they got the best offer at that time, and I think that's the thing. Like, you just choose the best offer.
Okay. One of the famous things in the early period of Gambit was when Edward left the team and he went to Curse, and you were trying these different support players out. It's easy when he came back and you won that IEM for everyone to just go, oh, well, the real storyline here is like Edward didn't know that he needed Gambit, and the Gambit players didn't fully know that they needed Edward. And, you know, now after they've been apart, they've realized, like, you know what, no, we need each other and we've got to come back together. And then you came back and it was really good. What would you give as your reason now as to why Edward left the team then?
I think these are the same things why I leave the team. Like, there is nothing new. The problems in team, the problems with communication. But for me, like, I was holding it more, but I got other problems. Like, I got problems with health, and I really want to see my family. So after we got communication problems and everything, and like when he left, I think we were like top 1 or top 2 after losing to Fnatic in best of 5, 3-2, and I'm leaving when we almost got relegated and barely won 2-1 Copenhagen Wolves in the best of 3 game for the 5th place. So I think although the problems are the same, the situation is a bit different.
One of the moments I always think of in Gambit's history, which seemed like the lowest point ever, this will sound weird, was actually at the Season 3 World Championship, and it was when you won the tiebreaker match to get into the playoffs. Because even though you won it, so you'd think you'd be really happy, like, wow, we win a close game, we're going to play in the round of 8. The look on your face was almost like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, we should have probably lost that game. Like, we should probably be out of the World Championship now. Like, this isn't working. Like, was it kind of like that in the moment?
But I don't really think so. I actually think that we should have win Nigen's World and then lose to SKT, to be honest. Like, I feel that if we did the proper game, I think at that time of the moment we were maybe even stronger and we could outplay them. But for example, I really think that we should have swapped in the game, and I told the team that we should swap the lanes, but our bot lane didn't want to. I think that the game we won was 2v1 game, and after that their bot lane was trying to find the 2v2, and they stomped our bot lane, killing in the lane 2 versus 2. And then the third game they were killing, even though our bot lane is telling the problem was not in that and in our rotations. I think that if we swap the lanes, it could be much better, because we would have farmed AD carry and he would just 1v5 people.
When you describe the problems that Gambit had, like people not wanting to practice or not wanting to change to the new way to play or wanting to just have one style, often people would say, okay, it's the real problem with Gambit is they have to travel so much and it's so strenuous. If you took all those problems away, the traveling ones, would the other problems still have been enough that you'd have to leave sometime or the team would have to break up? If Gambit for some reason could just say Russia joined the European Union 5 months ago and you could have just moved to Germany and lived there the whole time, you think that would have solved some of the problems? Would that have made it just fine?
I think at least I would be at the top level most of the time, and even if wouldn't solve the problems, I wouldn't see it that much, because overall I think that we can be by the just overall skill. We could overwhelm our enemies, and if we just, for example, spammed games, we would just intuitive find the ways of winning the game. And maybe we wouldn't be that much exhausted, so we would be more motivated. So we would look and analyze into game more. But you never know, because that situation never happened. It's really hard to say. Maybe we would see that results are bad, even though we're not flying, and we would split up even earlier, for example. I can't say it certainly.
Maybe this will sound like a naive question, but in game, if anything's broken, everyone just is like, Riot, please fix it. I always wondered, was there no way someone like Riot could have just helped Gambit out? For example, get a German company to indirectly say that they give you jobs through this company and it lets you have a visa to come through. Was anything like that tried to try and be able to live there? It just didn't work? What was the problem?
I don't know. It's really hard to say. Sometimes I'm speaking to some of Riot people and they don't even know that we got such kind of a problem. It's really hard to say. Maybe it's the problem with communication between Gambit and Riot. Maybe it's the problem of us not forcing it that much and insisting it. Maybe something else. But the problem was, and I would better live in Germany. I think most of the problem was that Riot couldn't do it because it's an American company. ESL didn't want to do it because I think in German laws are much more strict than the Sweden ones, for example. In Sweden, the esports is a real job at the moment. So it's really easy to do, it's the same as NNA. So it's really easy to do the work visa. And in Germany, I think no one even knows what esports is. And I think you need to offer some kind of really high paid job. And I think you need to almost pay all the social insurance if something happens and other things, and you need really long-term contract. I'm not sure about that. Maybe that was the problem, but I'm not sure about that, because that's I'm the player and not the manager or anything, and I didn't have that much time, and I really didn't want to get into it that much.
Everyone always used to say that if there's the playoffs coming or there's a big tournament, Gambit does their boot camp, and people make it sound like it's magic. Okay, they think you lock this door and then no one knows what's going on inside, and then you come out and you're just 10 times better. What actually happens in a Gambit boot camp? Do you really just sit and play and that's it, and it's really boring? Do you have some special process that you used to go through to get much better?
I think overall we just speak more about the game. We're finding the ways of us playing. We're finding the things what everyone really wants to play, and I think that overall people just train and play much more than they usually do at home. I I don't really want to blame someone, but as far as I know, Genja like almost doesn't play at home any solo queue, and he plays only 5 versus 5 scrims, and he says that it's enough, but he plays like I think at least 3 hours or even 4 hours of solo queue when we're at bootcamp, and I think it pays off a lot.
One of the weirdest things about Gambit for me is before Edward came back to the team, he actually at one point in time used to have like a bad reputation. People used to think he was toxic and all when he was called Gosu Pepper. But now he has a much better reputation in theory. I've seen in interviews, you always list him as like your closest out of all the members of Gambit. Like he's the one you're the most friendly with. And I remember seeing that when you were going to go to that first super team, he was going to be on it as well. Do you have a different relationship with Edward than you did with Genja and Darian and Diamondprox?
I don't know. We were just closer to each other because I think we shared the same goal. We always wanted to be the best. We trained a lot. We played like 12 hours a day, and we played duo. We thought about the game, and we tried to win all the time. I think that other people like didn't want to try into it that much, and I'm not sure about that, but I think that the thing just happened. I was speaking to him much more. He was much more open person, and it was much easier to have relations with him. For example, I think the second guy that I was close with was Darian. Like I was the closest with Darian and Edward, and with Darian we related a lot to our like gaming experience and gaming thoughts, and like we really like to play some kind of wired games like Magic the Gathering or something else. And I think that Darian is a really cool person, but he's really hard guy to work with. Like I would rather have him as friend than as colleague or like a team member, though no offense to him.
So like I mentioned, that super team, there was a time when supposedly Alexich was going to be the top lane, Froggen mid lane, and then the bottom lane would be Edward and Freeze. And you're actually going to be in a team with Freeze now and play top lane. If you just imagine, say that team really could have existed and could have gone into LCS, would it have actually been a good team? Like when you played those practice games, was it working out okay?
I think it was working out okay, and I think that would actually be like, I don't think that something would change that much. I think we would be like Alliance, I would say, maybe a bit better, maybe a bit worse. But I think we would have the same problems because I think overall problems that came were from Shook under like performing in the first days because of being not sure in himself. But I think after they fixed all their problems, he started to play his own game and they got much better results. And I think that the Lions got potential. So I think it would be the same. I don't think that it would change something much.
Well, you're known as one of the best mid laners ever. And you were describing before, there weren't that many players that were like really hard for you to play in mid. So if someone hears that there's a team and it's going to have Alexich on it, but he's going to go top lane and he's going to let Froggen play mid lane, they're going to think, oh, that means Alexich even admits like Froggen is better mid laner than me. True?
I would say it's more of a problem that it's really hard to find good top laners in EU. Overall, it's much easier to find like superstar mid laner than top laner. For example, I think that Souls is one of the best top laners in EU, but he got problems playing tanks. When other, for example, Wicked is really good top laner too, but his pool is really weak and he need to just fit into the meta. And I think others, for example, play only tanks or only assassins, and it's really hard for one top laner to play in meta when it changes. For example, if tank meta changes now, some people like for example double AP, some people I think like Freddy or other like Young Buck, they will be much weaker than they are at the moment.
In terms of Edward, even though you were saying like some members of Gambit maybe weren't as motivated or they don't practice, when I've talked to him, he sounds like he's really motivated. Like actually, even now when you left the team, he sounds like he still thinks like, no, we can still be good. Like I'm going to do whatever it takes. How would you describe him as a person? Because it seems like he's always had a really weird relationship with the rest of the team. Like maybe he didn't get along with Diamondprox, or maybe he was always like frustrated with Genja if they lost the bottom lane or something. How would you describe Edward as a person?
I think that he is one of the most passionate and motivated guys in Gambit, and I think that he's or like he will do everything to win, and he will train as much as he can, as much as he wants, and like he just wants to be the best. And I think that this is the thing that you need at the game, and I think that's like what made us friends, and that's the thing that I love in him, that he will do everything to win, and like it really paid off. He can play super beast until he's getting upset with something.
Playing with Diamondprox is obviously one of the most famous jungler mid combinations. Were you really guys where you actually like just sat down together and you figured out like, okay, this is what we're going to do in the game, and this is like the champions we're always going to play together, and we're always going to go like this, and you have a system like you come and gank for me now, or I tell you when to come? Like how much of it was just you just play and whatever happens happens, or how much was like thought through on how you want to play with Diamondprox?
I think most of the time it was the thing that happens, and it went okay, I guess. But when we
wasn't it really good?
I don't know, like I think that like the things when we were losing a lot, so I would say it's okay. Like if team is losing, then the problem is as a whole team is in the mid lane, in jungler, in top lane, in everything. So I wouldn't blame one person, but the team as a whole. So I would say it was okay. And like when we actually sat down and speak about what we will do, for example, he will gank at level 3, or like it was much easier to do something because I prepare for it. For example, I let the enemy push or anything. It was much easier to kill. So I think that when we actually sat down and speak about what we will do, it went much better than it was.
But thinking about the whole of the time you played together, not just the end, so you and Diamondprox from the beginning of Moscow 5 right through to now, overall, it was a really good combination, right? What made it work so well, do you think? Like, what was it about his style and your style? What matched up, do you think?
I think it really matched up in Moscow 5 when he played super aggressive counter jungle and everything. And like I really like to play aggressive mid lane. So I was just pushing mid lane all day, and the enemy mid lane couldn't do anything. And I could just roam into enemy jungle, then come back mid. And it is really easy to deny enemy mid laner if you're just pushing him all the time.
So if you're keep going, sorry.
Yeah, and I think that the problem with my playstyle, like I needed to adapt to Diamond's changing playstyle to more like safe, more passive, more counter ganking, and I still think that I couldn't adapt like as much as I should, and that caused some problems with me dying, for example, at mid lane or overextending or anything.
So when you describe now like having to adapt your style to how he's playing now, more of a passive style, people are going to see that you're now playing with Ku. And when I went back and did my research, even way back at the beginning of this year, you said in an AMA like that you thought Ku was the best jungler. I think you meant out of like maybe not people from LCS. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But you listed him already, even though you weren't in a team with him at the time. What is his style of play like? And did you already have him in mind when you wanted to leave Gambit? Like, I want to play in a team with him specifically?
Yeah, like I told him that I will pay any money that I need to get him into a team.
Why?
If I would ever leave Gambit.
What's
I don't
so
know.
appealing about playing with him?
Because it's not only about his mechanical skills, but overall when I spoke to him, and he's like 16 years old, but he told the things that a lot of players don't even know about or don't even think about. And this is the things that I want to see from my jungler. And I think that if the game coming out of jungler like that, and he will do the shot calls, then it will be really easy to win. And he was the one that, like, someone can disagree, but I can say that Fabian was shining because of Ku. Like, Fabian is a really good player, but with jungler like Ku, you can come from good player to the excellent player. And like, for example, when Fabian played Nidalee, because Ku was applying pressure, he was just getting, like, for example, kills or buffs or denying enemy buffs, and then they were just like 2v5 people.
When you say that he was telling you these things that, like, you know, a lot of players maybe don't know, especially if they're that age, can you give us like an example or what types of things you're talking about?
I don't really want to show all the cards, so I would say that these were strategical things that I think that if you're doing that, it's really proper, like that most of the time it was about the team should work as a whole, and like if he plays, for example, really aggressive, then it means that the team should play really aggressive too, and then it will excel. If for example someone is playing passive and he's playing aggressive, then he will die in the enemy jungle, or he will die like somewhere else. So he said that the teams should like play like one whole machine, and then it will lead to success. And overall, he said that the best way of defending is attacking, something like that.
Okay. So when you were in Gambit, you had these two famous series you played against KTB, this Korean team, and they, as an spectator, like they were really exciting, like really good games. Both teams playing really high level, backwards and forwards. What did you think of those two series you played? Like, were they unique in any way as an opponent? Why were the games so good?
I don't know. I think that because they were good because we were equal in skill and level. I would say the first best of three we were equal. The second one, I think we were behind of them. Though I still think that we were better mechanically, but their like strategy approach was much better, and they just abused us and like with their strategies, because like their knowledge of the game and they knew our weaknesses and flaws, and they were just abusing it. And I think that was the thing that they were using.
A long time ago in an AMA, someone was asking you about different mid laners, and when you were describing like the ones that are the best, you said, I would say Nukeduck in his best shape can be scary too, but he is a really strange player. Why was Nukeduck a strange player, or why is he? What were you thinking of, do you think?
He's still a strange player because he doesn't play that much mage heroes, even though when he plays them, sometimes it goes really well. I think it's more of a team thingy, maybe, why he doesn't play it. And when he plays assassins, like he can be really scary because he outplays the mid lane, but still sometimes, I don't know, at least when I played him 1v1, sometimes he was doing really good and sometimes he was doing not that good. And he's really strange, and I think that it depends on the meta, because I'm not sure if he can play mages as good as assassins. Though we'll see, like he can adapt, or maybe you don't even need to use some kind of heroes. As for example, I'm using AP tops, and I think that it's the best for our team and everything, but people still keep blaming me for not playing tanks.
In Gambit, usually when you have a really aggressive top laner, people would think, okay, he must have to have a really good synergy with his jungler. Like his jungler must be coming top all the time to help him and do 2v1 ganks. But actually, it seemed like Diamondprox almost never went top. In fact, xPeke used to go top. He used to roam up and then they'd do like a dive on the top there with Darien. Was there a reason why this was the way it was? Why did Darien and Diamondprox not get along or something? What was it? Was there a communication issue?
I think actually top lane was the only lane that Diamond came as much. So that was, I think it was more of Darien playing super aggressive when I played pretty passive mid, and Bud was playing pretty like passive too. And that's why Diamond went top most of the time, even though I think that sometimes there were metas that it wasn't the most effective way to play. Well, this was the thing that Gambit played like, and I think when he went top, I think most of wins were because of Darien getting ahead, and then Darien could, because of his play style, his super aggressiveness, he could snowball the lane so hard that the game was just getting out of control.
Because the reason I asked that question that way is because in the team that you've joined now, when they used to have Zoro Zero, even when they were in Lemon Dogs as well, it was quite famous that Zoro Zero was a top laner who actually roamed himself down to the mid to help the mid get a kill. What did you think of that style? Will xPeke do that sort of a style for Nukeduck?
I think it was because Zoro Zero was the one. I think that it's really hard to do the same, because Zoro Zero, I think, was the best top laner in the EU, and that's why he was coming mid, because he was so much ahead that he snowballed the lane that he came mid. If you see the games where Darien actually gets really ahead, you can see that he does the same. He goes into enemy jungle and he comes to mid lane to help or get the kill. Like, you just need to get really ahead, and I think that Zoro was getting ahead pretty often.
Back in the early days, Ryze was one of your signature champions. It was like, if people think of Ryze, they think of xPeke. But nowadays, you never see Ryze played mid lane. But Ryze is now played in the top lane and was in the last meta before the tank one. Do you like the idea of now being potentially able to play like teleport Ryze, and then if you can get fed, you can just teleport all over the map, kill everyone? Is this something that like you would look forward to as a top laner now?
That's definitely a thing I'm looking forward. So actually, I think that if I can practice Ryze more, I can win or get equal even in the like losing matchups, and then that this will come into the mid-late game where Ryze will be always useful.
We've seen in the tank meta that a lot of the really, really good top laners, but who usually used like AP champions, had a hard time adapting to the meta, and a different sort of player was doing better. If you have to still use some tank champions like Shyvana or Renekton or something, like, is this a really drastic style to have to change to? Could you already play these champions anyway? What do you think it will be like?
I don't know. I think I can play Shyvana and Mundo. I really like to come 1 into 5 people and tank them all day if I can.
Okay, another person is Freeze in your new team, was also going to be in that super team that you were going to be in if you'd have ever actually officially joined it, the one with Froggen, etc. Freeze hasn't played in LCS for 2 splits now, and so some people maybe have never seen him play or they won't remember him. How would you describe how Freeze plays AD carry?
I think he plays more of a team. Even though he plays the carry heroes, he thinks a lot about the team. And I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but I think in team with me, Nukeduck, and Ku, it can be actually really good. And I think overall that they're a really good lane with Mithy, and that he's really strong laner. And I think that it is really important, at least in current meta. And if there will be more 2v2 lanes, it's really important that your bot lane doesn't really get far behind.
There have been times when people said Mithy was the best support in Europe, and there's times when he's looking really, really strong, and then there are other times when he doesn't seem to be able to perform, or he seems like the main guy where when the nip goes offline, he gets nervous or something happens and changes in him. Would you agree with this? Have you seen this yourself?
Actually, I think that Mithy is still the best like support in EU. Or one of the best, but
in what sense is he the best or one of the best?
I don't know, like he is really good at mechanical skill of heroes when he's at his top form, but he also does a lot of things that are really needed, and I think that support jungler needs to do it. And like the timings and everything, like I played with him, and he's doing a lot of like timing calls that are really important. And I think that. Maybe he's like going weak offline because of the stakes. Like he knows and like there are 2 types of people that are playing better under pressure and that are playing worse under pressure. I think he's the type that is playing worse under pressure, and I think that you just need to find the way of like inspiring him and getting him calm, and then he will play really good offline.
When people heard that saw your statement, and you said in the statement, like, one of the reasons to do this is I want like to spend more time with my family, I don't want to travel all the time. Is there a degree to which trying this experimental team now, and you play for the Challenger, and then you try to get into LCS, if for some reason you didn't get into LCS, or you get into LCS and you're not in a really good team, is this like the last attempt at being a top pro for Alexic? Like, will Alexic keep going as... If he can still be successful, will Alexic be here in like 5 years if League of Legends is still here? Or is this like the last part of your career? What do you think?
Actually, I didn't think about it. I thought more about we will get into LCS and I will do everything to do it. But if I won't, I think I will just watch for the... I don't know, like what the team will want to do, and if we disband or not, what will players want to do. And then if, for example, I will get 0 offers, then I will think about maybe retiring or going into streamer. Like, but I think it's too early to think about that.
When you had the original offer for the Froggen super team after Worlds, before Edward came back, obviously, at the time, you were thinking about it. You were really thinking, like, if this works, maybe I will leave and I'll join this team instead. Did you ever, in your career, get, like, a really good offer from, say, an American team or some team in a different region, like a really good one that you actually considered? Was it always just, like, stick with Gambit or nothing? Was there anything that really tempted you?
I don't know. No, I didn't get any offer, ever.
Okay. Not even from another big European team?
No, not really. Like no one ever offered anything. Like they offered that to Gambit as a whole to join another organization, but no one offered me to join another team.
Okay. Right, I want to do a last question here, and I'm going to just do my classic style. But now that you're not in Gambit, you can't give me like every Gambit member I ask this question of. The aliens one is always just like, well, we're all a team, so I can't pick anyone for this. So like the aliens come to Earth for real this time, Alex, and they kill everyone in Gambit, and only Alex is left. And they tell Alex you have to rebuild Gambit using other players. So who would you pick to represent each Gambit member?
So they kill me too, or not?
No, you're alive. You're going to play mid lane, but who's going to be the other players?
I don't know. I would pick Cool, Zoro Zero, and don't know, some kind of C9 bot lane.
Cloud9 bot lane? Okay, why?
Yeah. I don't know. They're playing super good. And I think that Q is super good jungler, and Zoro is super good top laner. So overall, you just need to find the best. I know. I just don't want to pick Koreans because they can't speak English.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have anyone you want to thank or say hello to at the end of the interview?
I want to thank all our fans, all my fans, and I want to thank you for the interview, and my wife and my child for being my inspiring thingy.
Spasiba.
Спасибо.